So, Patrick. So you went a bit radio silent online after the early access launch. Not to generally dive into something personal, but was it kind of burnout? Did you shift priorities, or were you quietly kind of working behind the scenes on this masterpiece of GZ Doom that would be released?
It's mostly just us going heads down and just kind of staying, focused and on target on the game. A lot of work got done from when the demo and early access came out, and when the finished product came out. So there was no point at which like the game wasn't being worked on. So yeah, it was just us, not focusing so much on being out there and being in public as much as it was just us working on getting the game finished. So
Yeah.
that's kind of it's just kind of how it went for us. Just like we were just focused on making a game. So
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that you were making this game, of course, in your part time. So it's how many people are exactly kind of working on Beyond Sunset?
well, our core team is myself, Roth, and Mitch and Carl. That's the four of us together. Carl, of course, being our music guy, Roth being our level designer and sort of lead creative for the back half of the game, and Mitch, our other animator. So that's kind of the core team.
Yeah, I kid you not. I go to Archery on the weekends, and during the drive there and back, I listen to video game music. And Carl's, what's it called? Genetic Ambivalence, I think it's called. One of his tracks for the game is one of the tracks I'll stick on while I'm, heading 70 miles an hour down the motorway. You guys call them freeways. It's such a absolutely banging track. It's a motorway because motor vehicles go.
And you have your little tea. You go, I'm on the motorway. Look at me.
It's malted drink today. Usually it's coffee at 10 o'clock at night. But
it is late there. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Nick, just what have you been up to? You're here also. Tell us about what you've been up to.
You know what? I've been working on the 27th Nth review.
Yeah.
It's looking to be about a 3-hour banger where I revisit Deus Ex: Mankind Divided.
Right.
It's kind of a follow-up of my thoughts from a decade ago, which when I worked on it originally, I did a review back then right after it came out, so before the DLC launched. But the thing is, I was not as good a reviewer as I am now. And so a lot of that review is a lot about the series as a whole. And so to be able to dive into this and just really sink my teeth into this game and what makes it work and what makes it not work has been really fun to see that contrast, to see how many more bones there are in my evaluation. Yeah, so I'm editing the script of that. So that's like next month-ish. Maybe end of this month. By Halloween. Who knows?
Patrick, while we're on the subject of Deus Ex, in terms of like cyberpunk, what was it that really kind of inspired the look and feel of Beyond Sunset?
We had a lot of very disparate inspirations for Beyond Sunset. So I think first and foremost, the main inspirations for Beyond Sunset visually was the language of retrofuturism. We didn't really come at this with like a even necessarily like a cyberpunk kind of aesthetic choice. You can see and this is really heavily reflected, especially like in the prelude levels and like E2, where you can see that there is really heavily departed from what you kind of expect to see in cyberpunk, with this sort of like Art Deco look we have in episode 2, or the more kind of Star Wars-y environments that you see in like episode 4. Our goal, so the main inspiration sort of for the entire game was the book Snow Crash. Of course, obviously that's a big favorite of mine. You can see that pretty directly reflected in like the Drift City and some of the themes of the story. But the main source of inspiration visually was we looked at a lot of like synthwave album covers. We looked at a lot of like vaporwave, and we wanted to capture that retro futurist aesthetic. So we specifically looked at a lot of like corporate magazines, like computer magazines from the 80s, to try to create that sort of like 80s corporate look. And that's kind of what we were kind of going for a lot of this. So a lot of disparate, like sort of 80s pop culture, 80s design styles, and you can really see that reflected throughout the game. So
Yeah.
more than anything else, retrofuturism was what we were going for.
Patrick, I wanted to ask you a question real quick before I bump into medium. When it comes to that like vaporwave, that like retrofuturism, that kind of cyberpunk vibe, and that, where did you draw the line between? Since a lot of that stuff has come out in the past decade or so, you've seen a lot of people who kind of adhere to the pastiche of the aesthetic. It's like, oh, it's got to have the lines meeting at a 1 point perspective and stuff like that. It's going to have the neon aesthetic to it. You'll have a lot of people who pay tribute to the edge of what that aesthetic is. How do you move beyond it into something that's more genuine that you can then replicate through, like, say, an entire level or something like that? That isn't just, oh, this just looks and sounds like a game that's inspired by that all that other stuff that looks exactly like this.
I mean, we went back to the source on this. So the way that we specifically got the look that we wanted is, again, we very specifically went to archive.org, and we specifically found like Computer Magazine and what was the other one that we specifically looked like stuff that was like from the time period. We also looked at a lot of what was that book? Like those old like GURPS source books from like the 80s as well,
Yeah.
like the tabletop role-playing game. So we looked at a lot of like media from the time. So we weren't like looking at, we very deliberately were not looking at stuff from contemporary. So we weren't looking at things from like the last 10 years. So I think it would have been really tempting for us to look at something like Far Cry Blood Dragon as like a source of inspiration.
Right.
We very deliberately did not look at that kind of stuff. We very deliberately looked at like 80s arcade games. We looked at design magazines from the 80s. We wanted it to feel authentic. And that's kind of how we got that. Again, specifically, like we looked at a lot of like 80s fashion magazines too, interestingly enough. That's where you see a lot of that kind
Grace
of stuff.
Jones and stuff.
Yeah. And I think like finding archive.org was our friend for this. We found a lot of good stuff on archive.org. They just have a huge and impressive magazine collection on there where you can just go back and find anything. But that's how we got that kind of like a lot of those like old Apple magazines where they have that like kind of photo studio style. It's kind of hard to describe it, but a lot of those like old Amiga magazines and stuff, like user magazines, just it had that vibe we were looking for. So that's where we got a lot of those.